3, and we're just getting ready to do our program, and it'll be coming up in just a couple of seconds. It'll be further down the rabbit hole with Paula, Gloria, and everybody else.
It's Paula, Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. And today we're going to go more deeply into the topic of community. Why is community so important? Why is it that we can do so much better together than we can by ourselves if we can communicate and if we understand each other? In other words, being hostile to each other, stealing from each other, going to war with each other is actually not the best way to unfold the greatest potential of our community. And so I'm so pleased that tonight I'm joined by another public access producer here in Woodstock who I have enormous esteem for, along, of course, with Joe Barton, my husband.
And I'd like to add, that last show you showed was one of the best shows that I've seen on this station in a long time.
Wasn't it? I saved
Great show. Great show.
Day before, 2 days before 9/11, you know?
Tell people
yes.
the name of it and where to find it on the internet, because this will be played down in New York where they didn't see that.
Okay, well, the name of that movie we just showed on the Woodstock Truth Squad was called New American Century. The producer was Massimo, I'm sorry. He's an Italian film producer.
Massimo.
And it's just an hour and a half. You can see it on YouTube.
And I would recommend everyone watch it. It's great. Anyway, we have little Nazis here in Woodstock. It's called Jeremy Wilbur and the Town Board. And we've been trying to get them to do the right thing and take on Time Warner, which they refuse to do because Time Warner has limited our public access, and they're trying to shut down free speech. You know, 800 residents of Woodstock, which normally used to get us when we were on Channel 23, no longer can get us. And that's 800 viewers out of 3,200 viewers. Wow. And probably that 800 watched us more than the other viewers because they didn't have all the cable channels to watch. So we probably lost the biggest part of our audience. And
that's why I didn't like the word limited. It was almost like decimated. It's violated.
Right.
It's so wrong. Limited sounds like there's some iota of possibility that what they're doing is lawful. It's so profoundly unlawful, it makes the town board seem irrelevant.
But the town board refuses. The town board refuses to do anything as far as taking on Time Warner when they obviously violated the contract, and the town has legal standing to go after them. Unfortunately, no one on the town board has any balls to do it, and I'd like to also point out that Randy is running for town supervisor as a write-in candidate.
Actually, let me correct that. I am not running. I am available.
Oh, available.
If there is any such campaign for me, it is completely separate of me. If you ask me, I will gladly tell you what I'm going to do in any of these situations. But actually, as running a campaign, I'm not running. But I'm available to do it.
Okay, I'm going to write in Randy well, actually, I can't write in Randy because I don't vote, but I would recommend all you people write in Randy because at least Randy would take on Time Warner, which we need.
48 hours they'd have.
Right.
48 hours, then they're out of here.
Okay, and she would take on Time Warner. She would keep Urgent out of Woodstock, which is...
Kick them out of Woodstock.
Right, which would be wonderful. And,
Boy.
What else?
Municipal Power Company, if
take on
Central
the
Hudson,
meters, right.
If Central Hudson refuses to protect the life and the health of our population, then I'm afraid they have to go too.
Right on.
Right on. So... Here's three of us that say, we want you to write in Randy Steele for a town supervisor. So she's got endorsements from us.
Well, I don't want the job. I want to make that absolutely clear. I don't want to do this. I never wanted to do this. And the only reason why I do this is because I got so disappointed at the Meet the Candidates thing that went on a week ago tomorrow, right here in the community center, that I said, well, if anything's ever going to get done in this town, you need somebody to understand it. So what I would do, if I were to receive a plurality of the votes on a write-in, which would be unheard of, but if that were to happen, I would then take whoever got the second amount of votes and make them deputy supervisor, which is a position that we probably become aware of in the last term here. I would make whoever got the highest vote deputy supervisor, and I would only stick around long enough as supervisor to do basically my 5 points, 4 of which I think we've talked about here. And ultimately, then I would resign when things are fixed that way, because I don't want to be a politician. I probably know how to fix these things, and unlike anybody else, I seem to have the balls. The bird has the balls to do it, but and I don't want to do this. Or if any of the other candidates will pledge that these are the things they'll do, give Time Warner 48 hours to come into compliance, get the smart meters out of Woodstock, and I mean completely. The idea of community broadband and community cable and community power and community communications are not out of my either area of expertise or out of my consciousness. At heart, I'll tell you, I'm a socialist from the standpoint that I believe that there are certain communal services that not government, but a government-run and controlled system can provide at much lesser cost. One of the other issues would be marijuana, and that is if 2 states in this country can absolutely legalize marijuana, and the Justice Department of the Abomination administration in effect rolls over and plays dead once you're talking about legalization or decriminalization or medicalization. If you're talking about just legal recreational use, and the Justice Department says, okay, we'll go along with certain things to make sure about marketing and taxes and stuff like that, then if that's going on in 2 states, then a sovereign community of Woodstock can tell its paid police that they're no longer going to enforce whatever draconian marijuana laws happen to be on the federal or the state books. So those are the things that I would do. Then once that's done, I would gladly exit and leave it to whatever other lesser politician is there to follow me.
And one more thing I think you should do is whatever money's been allocated to this, that should go to this studio, should be going to this studio.
Well, ultimately with all of this, about the TV station should have, ultimately when we go digital, a 0.1 channel.
Right.
And it should be a high-definition channel comparable to any of the other networks, and then on that basis we proceed to rebuild the TV station, as every other TV station in this country has had to be rebuilt for the so-called digital upgrade. So
Okay.
that's my point about that.
You know, it occurred to me when I was kind of doing deep meditations on what public access is, if you think about the launch of a new technology and the wise people, the wisest people in the community coming together to decide, and these are good wise people, what would be the most beneficial way to use this technology, my thought is that it would be into 3 major groups, which would be that the public would have access to show the things that are joyful in their lives, artistic expression and so on. Then there would be an educational part where people would really learn useful things. And then finally there'd be a government part where people in the community would use this technology to reach into the workings of government and make participatory government that much more effective. And my thought was is that this would be such a full and rich culture that would have this type of use of the media, that what you'd have actually is interspersed. You would have a few people in the community start to advertise their services, their legitimate businesses that they're doing. And now these advertisements were supposed to be just a small part of it. But what you're seeing today is that it's been turned upside down, so that we think that the commercial part has the most lawful standing. So even when you're saying a .1 channel, when I'm thinking in terms of the profoundness of what public access means, of real education available in the community, not information that's withheld for the sake of promoting a monopoly over proprietary knowledge, and then finally government. How much less cheating and corruption would there be if you just had transparency? I mean,
Let me jump in on that also. To point out another thing about Time Warner, all the public access stations are supposed to have 3 stations. They're supposed to have public access, which is stuff like us, like we do here on Woodstock TV. There's supposed to be an educational channel, and there's supposed to be a government channel. Yet all the government stuff here in Woodstock is put on public access. We don't have, what did I just say, an educational channel. All these stations should have all 3, but Time Warner has managed to limit everybody down to just basically one channel. And the educational channel is at, what's that school that it's at?
At Onteora High School.
At Onteora High School. So,
But they don't even do anything with it, and if there's a government channel, then it should be coming out of Kingston, out of the county government, and that should be funded. And the problem is that, like we see in Woodstock, so much of things in this county are even more dysfunctional than we are. Kingston is so dysfunctional as a community that it can't even have a public access channel, and like we were talking about
they
before.
purposely shut it down in Kingston because of, mostly because of what Abigail was doing. Abigail was doing a lot of shows in Kingston on marijuana, the oil, the Rick Simpson cure, but that they didn't like that. But when she did the shows on
jury nullification.
On jury nullification, as soon as she did shows on jury nullification, right after she did those shows, they shut down the Kingston public access because they don't want the juries to know that you can go into court as a juror, and no matter what they're doing, you can say, nope, I refuse to put this person in jail. You can judge the law as well as the facts. And the judge will always tell you, I'll tell you the law, and you judge according.
You must do this.
You judge according to the way I tell you the law is. You judge the way the law is, according to the way I tell you. Which is a judge rigging a trial, and under our Constitution, the jury has the final word. The jury is the one to make the decision, not be told by the judge how they have to vote or how they have to decide. You as jurors can sit on a jury and say, I don't believe in the law. I don't think the law is fair, especially in cases of drug cases. Since there's no victim, there's no crime, and I refuse to put anyone in jail for this, and I'm going to vote not guilty. And that nothing can be done to you for voting your conscience. If you say that my conscience tells me that I cannot put this person in jail, that I have to vote not guilty. And you have a right to vote your conscience. You don't have to vote the law. And when Abigail put that on public access in Kingston, right after that, they shut down the Kingston station.
Yeah, and you think there's not a coincidence between Woodstock Public Access being shut down, Channel 23, and Randy and Joe talking about the real history of Time Warner?
Right.
Well, we didn't do that until after
we
they
did
took
it
us
after.
off 23.
We did
Yeah, I
it
know,
after.
but you were definitely gearing
It got
up for
worse
it
after
because,
that.
because no, but the thing
Yeah, then they started blacking us out. And
yeah, even on the digital sub-channel, they absolutely proved their worst fear, which is that you can have IP address discrimination. Ladies and gentlemen, there could be no worse discrimination than IP address discrimination. It's worse than sex discrimination and racial discrimination and religious discrimination, because you can do it point by point by point, and I mean point like down to the cent. Because every transaction is tracked on the credit cards and things like that, and they can profile you and slice you and dice you any way they want to decide what information you get and what information you're allowed to send out. So right now, I'm doing a big tango dance with the Earthlink Fraud Department, who I believe is my shoehorn into Homeland Security, which I believe is the front runner to this occupier who has, subsumed our rights and our freedom. And this has happened, of course, we've practically been swindled from the get-go, but there's always
not
that...
practically, have been
Yeah,
swindled.
But what you do see about the great American culture is that the ruse has been seen through time and time again. After you've seen through it, you can begin to see how history was rewritten, and you can start to read between the lines, and then you start educating yourself really rapidly, because you realize you can raise yourself up higher by stepping kind of on the shoulders of your ancestors. You know what I mean? All of us have come here from people who have had different experiences. And the place where we're at right now could be so much better, especially if we honor the best of what they did, which I believe media has changed history.
And what
I think
we
a lot
need,
of us don't know our backgrounds.
what we need is all you people out there in television land to get your heads out of your butts and get involved in what's going on. It's just like what's going on with Syria right now. That our government is trying to convince us and trying to tell everybody that we need to go into Syria. Let me tell you, if we go into Syria, Iran is not going to handle it and has said they're not going to handle it. Russia is not going to handle it. China is not going to handle it. If we go into Syria, we are walking on the edge of World War III, because Iran does have nuclear weapons and will use them if we go into Syria. And once one country uses a nuclear weapon, everybody's going to let them fly. And we're going to decimate this earth. It's not going to be fit to live on if you survive World War III.
You want
One thing I want to say is, that Putin installed Assad as president of Syria, so he's not going to let him go so quickly.
Right.
You want to hear the latest chapter in the soap opera, though?
All right, go ahead.
Just today's chapter. Skeletor, our Secretary of State, put out said something in response to a question that if the Syrians would turn over their entire cache of chemical weapons, that might be satisfactory, that would at least belay any sort of bombing that the United States wants to do. And that was just in response to a question. So all of a sudden, Russia and Syria, Assad himself, came out and said, oh, well, we do have chemical weapons. We haven't used them, but we have chemical weapons. So if all that's required is that we turn them over to the UN or some other authority in order for the bombs not to be dropped by the Americans, then we'll do that. So then Russia joined in, and Putin decided that, well, that would be good enough. So all of a sudden, the United States bluff has been called by Syria being willing to turn over its chemical weapons, and by Russia going along with it, and that this is all of a sudden a plan that everybody can go along with, and the United States is the only party in the international community that actually still wants to go ahead and with bombing and now is saying, oh, well, how would we know it's all of the chemical weapons? You know, in effect, their bluff is being called. And the United States doesn't like it when its bluff is called.
And it's the same thing with the WMDs in Iraq. You know, they said that Saddam Hussein has WMDs, Saddam Hussein has WMDs. And it turned out Saddam Hussein didn't have WMDs. And now they just wanted to go into Iraq so that they had reason to go into Afghanistan, which they had wanted to do all along for the oil companies. You can run around.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little something about that. Yeah, that's exactly right. Afghanistan, they went into Afghanistan specifically so that they could get a pipeline put through to transport the oil from Kazakhstan to the Red Sea. And they had been wanting that all along, and they had actually were going to get it with the Taliban. They were trying to negotiate with the Taliban to get that put in place, this pipeline. And the Taliban, at one point, they said to the Taliban, you can either be
Buried in gold or
you
buried
can
in
be
bombs?
buried with gold or buried with bombs. Make your choice. And the Taliban said no, and they wouldn't let them put the pipeline in. So they got the troops in place before 9/11 happened on the border of Afghanistan, and they were ready. They were already ready to move into Afghanistan before 9/11 ever happened. And once they did wage war against Afghanistan, the very first, and they did, and they toppled the Taliban government, the very first thing that, what's his name again? The leader of...
Osama?
no, not the leader of Afghanistan. He was a Unical employee.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean. I can't think of his name.
I can't think of his name, but you know who I'm talking about. He's the president of Afghanistan. His
Put in by the
his very first action. This is always telling of a president who's behind him. What the very first action he did was sign the pipeline through. Of all the things, after his country just got bombarded and everything happened, the very first thing he does is sign the pipeline, the okay for a pipeline through the entire country.
And I want to add to that, folks, and he'll be able to add to it too. And the reason that they want to go into Syria is the rest of that pipeline has to go through Syria.
Well, actually, the reason is because those oil refineries and those oil wells in western Iraq have just come back online. They've just been sold, and most of the rights to those are to the what I like to call the Great Atlantic and Pacific Oil Company, which is actually now known as BP. The old Anglo-American company wants to be able to get the that's all a Cheney operation in western Iraq there, with that secret military base to replace the one that got Osama bin Laden so upset that he was the false flag cover for what happened to the World Trade Center. And so ultimately it's important that the oil companies be able to build a pipeline through Syria, contiguously, in other words, all the way through Syria to the Mediterranean Sea, where they can then have a port and send all that oil to Europe or to Africa or wherever it'll get the highest price, just like they want to do with the oil and shale pipelines here. You know, there's another one of those wanting to, they're building another one of these fracked methane gas pipelines going right into Brooklyn. Through lower Manhattan.
While we're on pipelines and stuff, let me throw this in. Cuomo, if he gets reelected, folks, is going to open up fracking in New York. The deal is already set. He's just waiting for after the election.
Yeah, he's a bastard.
Right, wow. So you better vote Cuomo out.
By the way, this entire situation with Channel 23 and all of the things that are going wrong with us, and the fact that the Public Service Commission will not do anything about it and has basically gone into lockdown, that's all Andrew Cuomo as well. He's
right.
A sleazebag.
Right.
Let me add one thing back to the oil, and I'm with you on that. But one thing on the oil, very important people should understand, is that the oil isn't for you and me. Okay?
Right. It's
That's
not
not
for
who it's for.
American
It's not,
people.
they want us to believe that it's so we can drive around in SUVs. That's what people think.
No, it's so they can get it into Britain
But
where
it's-
the
it's so
prices
they
are real
can
high.
run their gigantic military machine that they've created, which they spend more money on the American military machine than all the other countries put together. Okay? And so you need oil to run a military machine. That's where all that oil is going to go, is for the running of the military machine. And if you're going to run the world, you better control the oil, and that's what they're trying to do.
Yep. No argument
But
from
you,
us.
but you notice that we consent to it in our ignorance. We're still
Right, the
consenting
American
to
people
it.
consent by not standing up and demanding change.
Yeah, you know, something I saw on the television. I forget. I don't have it. I don't watch television myself, but I saw a television somewhere. I saw a television somewhere that was on, and on it, I think it was in the laundromat. That's where it was, at the Woodstock laundromat. You can't get away from television in there. It's like in every room. And I was doing my laundry, and I was forced to watch television. And they had the picture of sports. Sports was on,
Right.
and the stadiums were packed with people cheering and just like going crazy over a
Yeah.
football.
They're there on Channel 23.
You know,
Tennis.
going crazy. Yeah, probably.
Actually, that's
Right, on
off
Channel
now.
23 now, it's tennis.
to watch. You
It-
know,
it
and they were
was.
going crazy. Thousands, maybe 50,000 people. Well, let me tell you, I was going to Washington D.C. Every year for the protests against the wars. And I stopped going the last couple of years because every year I went, less people went. And the last time I went, which was like just a couple of years ago, Ralph Nader showed up, Daniel Ellsberg showed up and got arrested. I mean, a lot of really cool people, anti-war people, were there. And yet it was only 1,500 people showed up to the D.C. protest the last time I went.
Yeah.
And yet there's 50,000 in the stadium cheering over a football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, you know, that started,
that's
that
right.
started in ancient Rome. The emperors of Rome, in order to keep the people sedated, because they were ripping them off for everything, and the people were starving and hungry, and they had nothing, so they set up the gladiators and all those games, and they gave out free bread to sedate the people.
Wow.
Between, you know, like for the commercial break, they threw bread to the people, and the people cheered for the gladiators, while Rome, the richest country and the most powerful country in the world, was being drained of its wealth by the rich and powerful, and it crumbled. And
From within.
From within, while they were cheering for the gladiators.
So what is the moral here?
The moral here is that for the people to get their heads out of their butts and start paying attention to what's going on in politics.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, Joe. People need to cease being spectators, because that's what they're being turned into from very young. Children are being brought up and being babysat by televisions.
Yep.
People put their kids in front of televisions. As long as they're watching television, then they feel they're safe, they're okay. And people learn to become spectators their whole lives. So I think
Oh,
the
well, now
moral of
they've
the
got
story-
Not just that,
smartphones.
and complacent.
and complacent. It puts your mind, you know, they've put equipment on people's minds while they're watching television, and they see that the brain wave is the same wavelength as a person that's in a coma.
Yeah.
And people cease from becoming activists. When you're in a coma, you're not too active, you know?
Right.
And so when you cease from becoming a spectator, you become an activist. And I think that's the moral. We need to become activists.
Well, that's
And I'll
why
tell
they
you,
call
my own personal life has become a lot richer and more fulfilled since I have become an activist.
You mean you don't want to go back and be a couch potato? Because what you were describing is exactly where people are dormant, they're couch potatoes. They don't
And-
move, they just watch.
And I'd like to add to this too. You people out there in television land, think about this for a minute. If you want to know what's going on in the news, and you turn on Channel 2, that they'll start with the first story, then the second story, the third story. You say, you switch to Channel 7. It'll be the same first story, the same second story, and the same third story. You switch to Fox News, to Channel 5.
You're still hungry.
It'll be the same first story, the second story. Do you mean that those 3 stories are the only 3 stories that are happening in the news? No. That's government, they're programming you. The media is completely controlled, and they're only giving you what they want you to think. You need to start reading, learn to think for yourself, go on the internet and research the truth.
And when you just pull away a little bit and sort of reach out in your own community, like what we're doing here in this room tonight, it's, you're developing real connections.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff becomes not so ominous, so threatening, so big. We're very powerful as real flesh and blood people.
Hey, by the way, you mentioned about jury nullification. I agree with you, Paula. Jury nullification, I just want to bring this up before I forget. I have a whole DVD on jury nullification.
Oh, wonderful.
So we'll have to watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, jury nullification is just another case where people go,
power.
let's
Where
wake up
people
and get real.
exercise their rights.
Yeah. It's
Stop
just
being a couch potato and start being active,
Or-
like Steve
yeah.
said. And you can be active in court. Look how many, since I do pot talk, look how many lives have been destroyed from marijuana. We've had young kids arrested, and once they get it on their arrest record, they can't get funding to go to college, so that keeps that kid down for the rest of his life. We have parents who lose their children because they smoke joints. We have so many people incarcerated, and I want to remind all you people out there, on marijuana, there is no victim. If you have marijuana, who's been harmed by you having marijuana? And since we know from the research that marijuana has medical values, the oil from marijuana cures cancer. Our government has 9 patents on medical marijuana. Our government has 9 patents on medical marijuana, yet the DEA classifies marijuana as a Schedule I drug with no medical value. Do you see the hypocrisy there?
Wow.
And they're filling our prisons with young people and destroying people's lives for something that they know does no harm. There's never been a death on marijuana from an overdose in recorded history of 5,000 years. Never one death recorded. So why is the government is trying to tell you they're protecting your children? They always do it that way. Oh, we're worried about your children. We're worried about your children. Our government is not worried about your children because they protect the pharmaceutical companies. And these days, marijuana is so expensive because of the prohibition on it that your children are going in your medicine chest and taking your pharmaceuticals. And we've had more deaths of children from pharmaceutical drugs than from any other drugs that we have.
Yeah, it's big right now.
Why do you suppose it's happened, that it's gotten to this point? I mean, why?
Because we have criminals in office.
No, but I'm saying, why of all things? Because there's a lot of aspects of the criminality of this DC corporation. But why the marijuana, and why maybe the marijuana smokers have been too passive because they don't like such ugliness, and you have to get involved in fraud to start to rectify this?
Can I answer that?
Because what I mean is, it was in the pharmacopoeia that they say the AMA didn't know the word marijuana. Had it been cannabis, they would have realized it was a central part of the pharmacopoeia.
Paula,
So how did it happen?
the right wing in this country, or the people who want to take away what liberties we used to have, are always noted for turning their argument 180 degrees around. So in other words, whatever they say is wrong is what they're doing is wrong. And during the Reagan part of the war on drugs, they used to call marijuana a gateway drug. And without going into the explanation of why they said that marijuana would lead to other things, but they called it a gateway drug, it is truly a gateway drug, and this is to answer your question, but it's a gateway to fascism. It's an excuse of something that everybody will want to do, whether it's for medicinal or pleasurable uses. Everybody's going to have it, or a lot of people are going to have it, and it's going to be an ability for then the government, before 9/11 especially, to crack down and stop you. Oh, you got any marijuana? We're checking for marijuana. Well, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that. It just gives us the ability to be able to search you and harass you and throw you in jail. And that's what it was all about. Marijuana was a gateway legal drug. And that's why any municipality should not enforce those laws anymore.
Were there just not that many pot smokers before? Otherwise,
No,
why
that
were
was
they
the idea. There were
outraged?
plenty. There were plenty, but they
why
knew
did
they wouldn't
why
get
did they-
outraged.
But why did they allow that? Why did
Why-
the pot smokers allow that?
Because
They
they're
knew that-
pot smokers. They're going to smoke. Hey, man, I don't want to get involved with such bummer. And that's the way most people are. And they knew that.
That's not pot smokers, that's the basic Americans.
Well, ultimately, when they put a pot smoker in jail and they start forcing them to do jail work, which is basically contract work for corporations that won't even pay them the minimum wage, that's ridiculous, you've got a very willing workforce. If you snap a whip at them or you tell them to do this, they'll do it. They're generally very passive. Most people. So it's the perfect crime for the government to enforce in order to enslave people. And that's all there is.
Right, it was
That
the,
makes a lot of sense.
What
That
do
makes a
you-
lot of sense, what Randy just said about being a gateway to fascism.
Yeah.
I can see that.
The drug
It's something
war.
that a lot
Right.
of people would want to have because of its many attributes, and then because everybody's going to have it, well, we're searching you for it. We need to search you
Right,
for
right.
it. So then they get the right to, to be fascists by
And-
these laws.
and it was the drug wars, they convinced most American that we had a drug problem. Actually, it started under Nixon. Nixon started the war on
right.
drugs, and
And you know why he started the war on drugs? Because
he wanted
was
to get
so
the activists for the war, the
Right.
anti-war people, and the
it
civil
was-
rights people.
it was a way to go after them, and he says it specifically in the Watergate tapes and various points. If you go and look at them, he wants, well, what is it, the one thing they all like? They all like that marijuana. They all like that grass. Go round them up on that. And that was the beginning of the drug war, was so that Nixon could have a means to fight back against the expanding at that time Vietnam War protests. And you want to bring up protests, you want to get people outraged, give them draft cards and say, we're going to send you off to die. That will get them off the couch. That's what did during Vietnam, and that's why we don't have a draft now, because they know that if they instituted a draft, that people would become activists to save their own couch potato asses.
But what can we do about it right now? Now all that's happened. How can we move forward?
We
with
can only
more-
do what we're doing with public access, and what Steve is trying to do, what Paul is trying to do, what I'm trying to do, what Randy's trying to do is wake you people up out there in television land.
Communities now, what we can do, Paula, right now, is that there are 2 states that have legalized marijuana. And the United States government has already set a precedent that they will not go after the states that legalize marijuana for recreational use, but they will if it's only legitimized for medicinal use, because then that gives the United States DEA and FDA trouble with their main clients, which is the pharmaceutical industry. So if a community just points to Washington State and to Colorado and says, we are ordering our police not to enforce any marijuana laws, other laws will still enforce, but marijuana laws look the other way. And that's what communities can do, because there's no state or federal mechanism at this point to fight that kind of action. But people have to get involved.
Yeah, let me say something on that too, and that is that what Paula said was, what can we do now? We are doing it. We're educating people. And people need to become educated because they're ignorant of the facts, because they've been brainwashed by mainstream television. And that's what we're doing here at Alternative Media, is trying to educate people. I mean, some of the stuff is just common sense. It seems like it's okay to radiate us with EMF radiation and poison us with hydrofracking, and that's all safe, and it's all safe to eat GMO foods. No reason to put any labels on our foods and let us know if it's GMO foods, and prescribe us all kinds of drugs for any kind of condition, abnormality with a chemical. But for some reason, it's not okay to have marijuana.
Right.
You know, wake up, folks. And I don't even smoke.
That does not have to be. No, not that you don't smoke, but it doesn't have to
I smoke
be.
enough for him.
But it doesn't,
He smokes my share.
it does not have
Give
to
him my
be.
share.
All right, thank you.
It does not have to be that anybody within the range of this signal in Woodstock has to be subjected to local police enforcement and harassment due to marijuana laws. It's just a fact that people locally haven't done anything about it yet.
But you know, Randy, the other day, we found out about a lady who's actually a singer in a band who was not very enthusiastic in supporting us when we were promoting the free all marijuana prisoners concert series at the Harmony Cafe.
We won't give her name, but we were doing a show and we were doing free all marijuana prisoners, and she was singing, and I asked her, would you, while you're doing your show, make a statement about free all marijuana prisoners? And she got uptight at me and said she wouldn't do it, and we just found out that she's been busted here in Woodstock
Right.
for marijuana.
Right,
Oh,
but,
wow.
but,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
but
Oh,
my,
that's why, that's why.
but the
No,
thing is,
I don't know that that's why,
No, no.
but it's very karmic.
no, but
But
let
guess
me
what? It
continue
still
with-
shouldn't happen, not even
I
to
agree.
her.
Yeah,
I
but let
agree.
me
Not
con-
even to
but-
her it should
But let me
happen.
continue, because I'm saying, what can we do now? We all know the water under the bridge is so, terrible, how this happened. So we heard this was going on and that at 6 o'clock she would be arraigned, right?
Yeah.
And so you were saying the best thing to do,
Yeah, I said the best thing to do is if a lot of people showed up at her arraignment, if that court had been full at her arraignment, it would have forced the judge to be a little more reasonable, which I'm not sure exactly. We still haven't heard all the facts, but Paula went to court at least and Paula was the only one that went there.
well,
Yeah.
that I recognize I didn't see other people there for her,
Oh.
or other people who I would have expected weren't there.
But the whole town should turn out. When we have a local person here arrested for marijuana and is going to these local criminal judges that we have here in Woodstock, and that's right, criminal judges, and if you don't like it, sue me.
But also to our peers for not showing up too.
But
Because it's getting to that point now where we're going to have
The
to
whole
say,
town should turn
which
out.
side of the line are you on? Or almost like, if you haven't been arrested, maybe you're on the wrong side. It's getting to be like that, because when you actually start to look at the agenda and what's happening, and let me tell you what happened when I did show up for this young woman's arraignment. I came in, I was a little bit late, maybe 10 or 15 possibly minutes late. And before I was deliberating, should I really do this after all? She didn't, But then I thought, no, nobody should be going through this.
Right, we support anyone
So,
arrested.
so I go down and I kind of look around and I didn't get the feeling she had friends there. It's not the feeling I had, because usually when people come to court for us, thank God, and thanks to Abigail Storm too, for bringing 32 people once when we were in Hurley before Judge Michael Jordan. But, I don't know, it's like the judge has a responsibility, but so does the lowest level of society and person in the food pantry. Not jostling for position have a responsibility. We have a responsibility in front of the camera, and you also have a responsibility listening to this. We're all in this together. And I think sooner or later it does boil down to flesh, eyeball to eyeball, to say, let's wake up and not do this anymore. This is a prison-based, slavery-based system. It's oppressing people, not only those in prison, but most certainly those in prison, or children who've been taken away, things like that. If it's something you don't easily want to look at, mainstream education and entertainment will take your attention away from. But when you do look at it, your soul will be that much richer for it, because you're going to understand your brother and sister to the farthest corner of your community and society. And that's what's going to make your life that much richer. That's how valuable public access is. Media that's a message by the people. That's noble. That's not something diminished or lesser than what some kind of corporate think tank can come up with for the next shareholder profits session. You know
Right
what I
on,
mean?
Paula.
And we need
Yeah.
you people out there in television land to take a stand, especially here in Woodstock and even down in New York City, where this show will be shown, probably down there also. We need you people to start supporting public access. They are trying like crazy to limit our access to you, the public. And they've done it by moving us to 20.2, and we've lost a big part of our audience. And the fact that every now and then, all of a sudden, we get blackouts. And if you're watching us on 20.2, if you listen to the sound and look at the picture, and then go to 23 where we used to be, you're going to see that the picture's better and the sound is better. That's Time Warner Cable making us look bad. And so if the sound ain't good and the picture ain't good, they're hoping you change the channel and you don't hear the truth that we're giving you here. So we need you people out there to stand up and especially here in Woodstock, tell this town board to get off their butts and do something to protect the public access in this town, and bring this station back up. They were getting, Jeremy Wilbur told me himself that they were getting $120,000 every year that comes from your pockets. Actually, Time Warner gives it to them, but Jeremy Wilbur didn't want to say that. He said, no, actually, it comes out of the subscribers' pockets. But when you pay your Time Warner bill, that money goes to Time Warner, and then a piece of that, Time Warner gives...
Tiny piece of that.
Time Warner gives back to Jeremy Wilbur and the town board. Now, that money, because it has to do with the cable rights and with television and all that, should come right back into this station to make this station a top-notch station. But Jeremy Wilbur and the town board take that money and throw it into the general fund, and who knows where the general fund goes. I would say to their contractor buddies to fix the garage that has the roof that leaks.
Yeah.
I know, and Randy, at that meet the candidates, I came home and told Joe about it. I said there was no audience participation.
Right.
Even me, public access producer, creating a document I'm going to put on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I can't even get a peep into it.
And isn't it wild when they have a public be heard at the town board meetings? The public can be heard if you get there early and you're one of the lucky 5 that get your name on the list. If 10 people want to speak, they only allow 5. How is that public be heard?
And how many minutes do you get to speak, Joe?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. And these clowns are
How can
Jeremy
their
Wilbur and the
decisions
town board.
How can their decisions reflect your feeling if you have 2 minutes of
Right.
No
feeling?
feedback.
10 people,
Right,
5
right.
people for
They-
the whole community.
They have to reserve their time to talk about the ethics board.
Right. And I was there when a guy came in, I don't know his name, and he said one of the town board members was a liar and a cheat, and he
And a
wanted
knave,
and a knave, and he wanted him sanctioned, and he gave all the facts to back up what he was saying. And after he was done, none of the town board commented on it. It was like we didn't even hear that this guy just said that this guy's a scammer and a liar
And a knave.
and a knave.
Who was it they were calling a name?
What was, I don't
We don't-
remember.
we don't-
I don't remember. I think it was Panzer that he was saying it.
Thank you. Next, please.
Right. And Jeremy Wilbur, you didn't even pay, here's a person from the town giving you the facts that one of your board members is unethical. And you did nothing about it. You didn't answer, you just ignored it. You just went on with business as usual.
Well, that is business
But
as
that's the
usual.
problem. But don't you think that's the problem when we come along and we put some real soulful energy into it? They
and-
kind of look at the script and they go, just a second,
Wait, that's
they're
not
not
in
in
the
the script.
Right.
And they kind of don't know what to do.
Let me jump in on this. Is another one good for Jeremy Wilbur and the town board. My wife Paula here, who I love very much, has a bachelor's degree in what is it in
Philosophy, ethics.
in ethics, and there was an opening on the board on the ethics committee, and they wanted someone who wasn't a Democrat and wasn't a Republican, and Paula offered to be on the ethics committee. Now they said, well, Paula don't live in Woodstock.
No, I don't have that I didn't have a political party. And I
Right.
said, oh, yes, I do.
Right, the Freedom First Party.
Freedom First Party.
But you didn't have to have. You shouldn't have
Are
to
you a
have
member of a party? And I
you
thought,
didn't
well,
have to
I'm
ha-
sure my husband would let me become a member of his party. I wouldn't want to be a member of a party that
but
didn't
anyway-
have me as a member.
Right, but anyway, then he said, Paula doesn't live in Woodstock. Well, our address is a Woodstock address. I've been a resident of Woodstock. Half the people in this town know me in Woodstock. I live in Woodstock. I hang out in Woodstock.
But it's on the side.
I live on the other side. My address is Woodstock, but on the other side of the street is Saugerties, and I happen to live on the other side of the street. But I've hung and lived and hang in Woodstock. I don't go to Saugerties. I never go to Saugerties. Now, they're using the fact that
5 more minutes from
they're
that
using
woman from Saugerties,
right
which
now.
I'm now
Now they
calling.
call Paula the woman from Saugerties because they don't want to have her on the thing. And pretty soon, you watch, they're going to try to get me and Paula off this station because we slam them all the time by saying we are not residents of Woodstock. I live in Woodstock. I don't care what they say.
Well, so after you edit and work and produce on stuff, you want to get it to have the widest distribution. So I did look into getting onto Saugerties Public Access, but we can't because we have a Woodstock address. So that means they're actually putting us in the position that I always knew constitutionally had to be there, which is that public access should be county-wide.
Yeah.
If Joe got busted for a no driver's license in Woodstock, why is he going then to Kingston and then to Marbletown? Way over on the other side of the county where we don't have any reach. But we surely could because every courtroom we were in, where we were heard, nobody regretted the time that they spent with us. I think on the driver's license, they were in stitches at one point.
Well, you know what they call the
Randy.
area, you know what they call the area where you actually live? It's the Constitution-free zone.
Right.
Yeah, right?
Right, but you get my point, now I'm that woman from Saugerties.
Well, that's just the dirty politics in this town. And
No offense to Saugerties, ladies.
Hey, can I say one thing? I just want to say one thing before this show closes, and that is Wednesday is the anniversary of 9/11, and we need to, besides everything else we've been asking for and demanding, not asking, we're demanding, it's all right, is a new investigation of 9/11.
Right.
An independent, a truly
Independent,
independent
right.
investigation of 9/11. We've shown you enough information to show you that something is amiss, more than something is amiss.
And Steve.
no,
may-
treason was done.
Treason is afoot,
Right.
not
Right.
amiss. Treason is afoot.
9/11 was treasonous act by our government officials in Washington. Cheney, Bush, Rumsfeld, all those guys committed treason.
And-
Wolfowitz.
I know, and may we be, humble that we're worthy of getting the knowledge of a
Yeah,
new
definitely.
investigation, because
Right on.
if it is a deep investigation coming from sources that haven't been able to get together and freely and in a relaxed and secure manner exchange information, then I think the result of that means that probably all of us are going to be shaken by something as monumental as understanding what really happened during 9/11. That's what I think.
I agree.
I agree.
And like Steve said, we demand a real investigation, independent, and the criminals that pulled this off should be brought to justice, regardless of whether they were president or vice president or what was the other one?
Otherwise you have that.
Secretary of
You're
State.
talking about the immunity, right?
No, it ain't.
But remember, that is written in. And that's,
Obama just is considering signing immunity for George Bush against anything that what we just mentioned, prosecution.
And all the rest of them, all the rest of the
When-
peanuts.
just talk about that?
if he signs that, then he's made himself a party to the treason.
Yeah.
And there is no immunity from treason.
Uh-huh.
provided that the people stand up, and that's why we always say, take this TV stuff in small doses, be judicious that you're really getting the nourishment of good knowledge, and if it's good knowledge, go out and apply it, have a better life. Be
Amen,
happy.
Paula.
And I want to end this with one more thing. I found out from a very reliable source that Obama has given 4,000 bullets allocated 4,000 bullets to every member of the Homeland Security. Now, what is all those members of the Homeland Security going to do with 4,000 bullets?
They're told to kill, you said, every man, woman, and child.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that part up because I was waiting to get more details, but supposedly, now that she's brought it out, supposedly there's an order waiting to be signed that Homeland Security is going to kill men, women, and children in the United States, and they have been allocated 4,000 bullets, but let's just say that's hearsay right now, and I'm going to get the facts on that, and I will bring them to you. So this is Paula Gloria.
Bye.
I'm not at all ashamed to say that I'm growing marijuana in my yard.